Hey guys, Matt aka Martiln here, and welcome to this new series called Making Music in Ableton Live. In this series, I'm going to be going through how to get started with creating your own music using Ableton Live 9, more specifically the latest version of Live, which is 9.7.2. The series is intended for people of all levels of experience, from people who've never opened up the program before, to people who've been using it for years and want to try and pick up some new and helpful tips and tricks. I'll be going through everything in as much detail as I possibly can, so these videos may end up being fairly long depending on the topic that's being covered. In this first video, I'm going to be going through an overview of the different parts of the program, how to navigate between them, and an overview of what they're used for. So, without any further ado, let's jump right in. So here I have a brand new Ableton Live session opened up. What you see here is pretty much identical to what you will see when you first open up the program after you've authorized it and installed it correctly, which if you want more help on how to be able to do that, you can head to Ableton's website and there'll be details there, guides on exactly how to go through all that. It's a super straightforward process. So the first thing I'm going to do is just work from the top all the way down through the different parts of the program. So let's start over here at the top left. So up here in the top left of the program, you will see this bar of icons just here. You may also have an extra icon or a little extra button in here that says EXT on it if you've already set up some MIDI instruments to sync with Ableton Live, which I might get into in a later video. So the first thing you'll see is this link button just here, which Ableton created this software, open source software called Link, which basically allows you to sync up multiple versions of Ableton or any other pieces of software that utilize Link so that they all sync to a master tempo over wireless, which is really, really useful for playing in live situations and jamming with other people. Up next, you've got the sync in and out indicators. Basically what these do is if Ableton is receiving any sync messages in, MIDI sync messages in, then this little part here will light up. If it's sending any sync messages out, then this little bit here will light up. Next across, you've got the tap tempo button and the BPM value. So what these two things are is this BPM value sets the beats per minute of the session that you're working with. This is automatable, but we'll get to that later on down the track. And also the tap tempo here. So in case you are trying to figure out the tempo of something by ear, you can click on this, 2, 3, 4, tap along, click along to a song, and then it will match the tempo to whatever you're tapping into it, whatever speed you're tapping into that button. So to set the tempo manually, you can type in a value, click on the tempo value and type in any value that you want. So the next thing we've got here are the tempo nudge buttons. Basically what these do is temporarily slow down or speed up the track so that you can try and be in sync with other musicians or other tracks that are playing. Next here along we have the time signature of whatever the current set is that you're working in. Then we have the metronome button here. You can turn the metronome on and off by clicking it, or you can also set a count in. And you can also go into edit MIDI map and key map modes here. The next thing you have here is the quantization, the global quantization value, which we'll get into a little bit later, but this is useful to know that this is where this lies. The next thing we have here are the transport controls. These are in the center of the screen. So first here you have the follow button. Basically what this will do is when you're in arrangement view, which I'll get to in a second, your screen will follow along with the playhead rather than you having to play catch up with the playhead. Next here is the playhead position in the arrangement view, divided into bars, beats, and then division of whatever beats that they are. Generally, this is in 16ths, so there'll be 4 different values to go through here before it increases the value of this beats number by 1. Next, you have some pretty standard transport controls. You've got a play button, a stop button, and a record button. The next thing you have is the MIDI overdub button. This will come to when we get to recording MIDI. Next thing you have is the automation arm button and the back to arrangement automation button, which again we'll get to in later videos. Next thing we've got here, if you don't see it, then you need to switch to session view, which I'll get to in a second, is the session view record button and the prepare new scene for recording button, which we'll get to when we get into a more in-depth look at session view in a later video. The next thing we've got here in the top right hand of the program is the draw mode switch, which turns on draw mode, which we'll get to in later. Here's the computer keyboard switch. Basically what this does when enabled is turn your computer keyboard into a MIDI keyboard so that you can play notes with your computer keyboard. Here we have the key and MIDI map buttons. Clicking on one of these will activate key and MIDI map modes respectively so that you can map certain things, certain parameters to either your computer keyboard or an external MIDI device. These two indicator buttons here in the middle signal when there is either key or MIDI messages going in and out of live respectively. Here is the CPU meter, which shows how much CPU live is using at any given time. This is the hard disk overload meter. If this is lighting up, then something's wrong and you'll probably be having dropouts in your sound. And these are the MIDI track in and out indicators, which signal and light up when live is sending out or receiving any MIDI messages to its tracks. The next thing we have over to the left-hand side is the browser window. I'll be going over this in the next video, so stay tuned for that one. Now, in the middle here, we have a toggleable view. Basically, this first view we're in at the moment is what's called session view, and it's what you'll see when you first open up the program. So this view is also switchable to what's known as arrangement view. There are two different ways you can do this. You can either press tab on your keyboard, and this will switch it to arrangement view, or up in the top right-hand corner of this view, you'll see these little icons. You have the three lines going horizontally and the three lines going vertically. The three vertical lines represent session view. So if you want to switch to session view, you can click on that. And the three horizontal lines represent arrangement view. So if you want to switch to arrangement view, you can click on those. I'll be going into a more depth overview of both of these different views in later videos. The next different view that we have here is the groove pool view. Now this is a little bit of more advanced aspect of live, and you probably won't be using it until later. And in fact, you probably won't have it open up until you do. So you can open and close this groove pool by clicking this little indicator just here, this little wavy indicator just here. Now it's worth noting that the groove pool is actually connected to the browser window. So if you use this little arrow up in the top left-hand corner, this will, if you click on this, this will collapse the browser window as well as the groove pool window if you've got it open. So if I click on it, you'll see it collapse the view. And if I click on it again, you'll see it opens it up. So the next things we have are on the bottom of the screen. We have this info view here, which is showable or hideable by pressing shift and question mark, or by clicking the little arrow in the very bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And this will show and hide the info view. It's a really, really useful little view because what it does is if you hover over anything in the program, it will show you in that view what it does and give you some neat little keyboard shortcuts for how to use it and some different ways to use it. The next thing you have here is right next to the info view is the device view. Now this is where you drop all your instruments, your samples, your audio effects, your MIDI effects, everything. And this is where they all show up in the program. Again, the info view is actually connected to the device view here, which you can show or hide by clicking on the arrow in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which I'll do and show you now. There is also a more advanced keyboard shortcut for this, which is Command, Option, and L, and that will also show and hide this device view. Now, much like the middle view, which is toggleable between the arrangement and session views, this device view here is also toggleable between device and clip views. So you can do that one of two ways. You can either press shift and tab, and this will switch it to clip view, which we'll get into when we talk about clips in a later video, or you can click on this little part here down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, right near the show and hide view arrow. And you can also get back to the device view by clicking on the little button next to it. The final thing that we have in our Ableton Live window is right down the bottom is what's known as the status bar. Now this status bar basically shows any kind of status message about what Live is doing. It can show warnings. It can show that it's buffering samples. It can show what's selected, how much time is selected in your arrangement view, as well as a bunch of other things that are really useful to know in certain situations. So there you have a brief overview of the different parts of the program that is Ableton Live 9. I know this video might have been super basic for some of you, but in order to be able to use the program well, it's really useful to know what each of these different parts of the program are. As always, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you really enjoy my content, consider heading over to my Patreon page and supporting me on there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. My name is Martiln, and I'll see you in the next video.